The House has before it on the 11th order House Bill 1259, which has been read. Mr. Chief Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the engrossed House Bill 1259 was introduced by Representative Mackey and other House and Senate sponsors. Engrossed House Bill 1259 is a bill for an act to create and enact a new section of Chapter 1-08 of the North Dakota Century Code relating to requiring the state to observe standard time year-round, and to repeal Section 40-01-20 of the North Dakota Century Code relating to daylight saving time. Mr. Speaker, your Transportation Committee, Representative D. Ruby, Chairman, recommends amendments as follows, and when so amended, recommends do pass on House Bill 1259 by a vote of 13 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absent not voting. Mr. Speaker.
Representative Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, I bring before you today from your Transportation Committee a unanimous 13-0 vote for House Bill 1259. This bill states that the state of North Dakota and all political subdivisions of the state are exempt from daylight savings time and must observe standard time all year round. This bill does not affect the time zones within the United States. As a committee, we listened to testimony in favor of eliminating daylight savings time. Some cited health studies that have shown there is no medical benefit to observing the time change, and in fact, studies have shown that doing so adversely affects our sleep-wake cycles. I'm fairly certain that most of you at one time or another have had to navigate these time changes with your small children. These changes can take several weeks to adjust to and often put parents and kids into a sleep debt, causing mental and physical fatigue, especially the parents. Studies have also shown that ending daylight savings time would allow for more exposure to natural light throughout the year. People who live and have lived on farms say that the change adversely affects their animals as well. Recent polls have been taken across the country indicate that approximately 63% of Americans support ending daylight savings time, and that number is growing every year. Your Transportation Committee believes that it's the right time for North Dakota to set the standard for the rest of the country by eliminating daylight savings time. If nothing else, at least we wouldn't have to change our clocks twice a year. Mr. Speaker and the Assembly, your Transportation Committee asks that you light up the board with a green vote. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? The House has before it for Representative Satrom.
I love 1 extra hour. Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, I love 1 extra hour in the summertime of sunlight to play with my kids, my grandkids, be out in the yard. If you don't want to change things, just keep it daylight savings time. Don't go the other way. Anyway, I think this is a bad idea. Thank you.
Representative Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I voted the wrong way in committee after having talked to a couple of my people back home. And what they said was, sun will go down out west at 8 o'clock then. It's going to come up earlier. And it's going to be harder for him as a farmer to get his people to come to work at 6 o'clock rather than 7 o'clock. And, you know, like you, I like your idea that I like the sun up, you know, as late as it can in the summertime. So I'm going to vote no.
Representative D. Ruby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly. I also like my lighter evenings as well. I tend to be out either mowing or doing something around the house in those evenings. But the limitations the federal government has, we can't move the lines of the time zones, and we can't go to daylight savings time. There was some talk about the feds allowing that, and maybe they will in the future, and we could always adjust that. So I would hope they would, but I think I'd heard they were working on it and possibly passed it and then very shortly repealed it. I don't know if that's true. I never looked that up, but I thought I'd heard that. But I would like to be on that time as well. But the key of this bill is basically to prevent us from having to move our time forward and back, every basically twice a year. I know that's a frustration for a lot of people. I heard a lot of complaints, saw a lot of complaints on the internet every time it happens. And one of the things that I thought about with this is, yes, I like the evenings as well, but, you know, around the 4th of July, you know, if your kids want to watch fireworks, they can actually see them a little closer to bedtime than we currently do if you want to wait till it's dark. But the main thing is, if you think about some of the professions that work in the summertime, you know, construction industry, other industries that like to start early to avoid the heat. Well, the way this is set up is it'll get lighter out earlier in the morning. So you'd have basically people having one less hour of working in the dark, which is not as safe as when you're working in natural light. So I thought that was a plus that I hadn't considered before, but it's something that came to me. So I know you can vote on this how you like. You know, we prefer lighter in the summer, but it's still going to be, for the most part, in the Central Standard Time. It's going to be 9:30, 10 o'clock still before it gets fully dark. I think that's a acceptable change so that we don't have to keep adjusting our clocks back, forward and back each year. So I would hope we could pass this and keep this conversation going. And then if the feds ever allow daylight savings time to be year-round, I'd be all for voting for that. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Klemin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was hoping that we would get some type of compromise out of this bill, but we aren't. What I would really like to see is that the eastern part of the state would all be on Central Standard Time all the time, and that the western time of the state, western zone of the state would always be on Mountain Daylight Time. That way the whole state would be on the same time all the time.
Representative D. Ruby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't mean to belabor it, but, you know, I do understand the border issues. You know, the part of the state that used to be in Mountain Time, I believe, was right along the Missouri River, and there was discussions about, you know, if the bars closed in one area, they had another hour on the other side. So later, I don't know if it was for that reason, but it was moved much further west. And they do want to stay Mountain Time in the southwest part of the state. This allows that. And yes, we'll be the same time zone, or same time, even though we're in the same time zone, as our neighbor to the east for half of the year. But, you know, if we're worried about borders, we will be in perfect time with our neighbor to the north, Saskatchewan, who does not observe daylight savings time.
The House has before it for final consideration House Bill 1259. The clerk will open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Do any members wish to change their vote? The key will be closed and the clerk will take the record. Final vote shows 55 yea, 37 nay. House Bill 1259 is declared passed.